Good morning from New Zealand, Studi. How are you, mate?
Good, man. How are you, Matt?
I'm fantastic. The day has dawned bright and sunny, so one cannot complain. So, welcome to our first podcast. Yay, we finally made it. We've pressed play. We've pressed record.
We'll see how it goes.
So, for those of us who haven't seen us before, fair enough. This is our first podcast. You're allowed to have not seen us before. We've sort of talked through a format that we're going to run through. So it might work. It might be completely awful as well. So bear with us. Our first thing that we're going to do every week, though, is we're going to talk about our wins of the week, which is pretty cool because we're both business coaches and we deal with a bunch of people and a whole bunch of different stuff happens. So we'll start with that, and then we'll talk about our topic of the day, which I think that practically every single business owner will find useful, to put it mildly. So, wins of the week. You go first, Judy. What's your big win of the week?
Big one of the week was recruiting. I've had a client that's been spending a couple of years in a really tight labor market for physical therapists, not really getting anybody, and now he has 3 candidates on that he's have it not only applied but made it through the first screening and phone interview and stuff, and are actually going through for interviews. So from those 3, we hope he's going to find one that's a great fit and be able to bring him on, or her, depending on which candidate it is. But yeah, that was a big deal, and all that came about through kind of reordering and crafting and remessaging on the job posting.
Awesome. Well done.
How about you?
Me, I deal with a whole bunch of different businesses, as you know, but one of them is a motorcycle shop, and they have 3 dealerships not far from where I live. And I've been working with this guy this is our 13th year together. When I first met him, his business profits were below the red line. They were not flash. And he just made, for the last 4 years, he's made more than 7 figures in net profit. So, and we count net profit here in his context as tax paid money that he can choose to take out of the business without paying any more tax on it. So it's actually, for him, it's tax paid. It's not EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. It's just earnings. So how much he can actually take, and he's made more than 7 figures. Anyway, he'd be having some real stock problems, and I worked with him on a strategy to phone up his suppliers and say, hey, listen, you need to supply me. I'm the biggest dealership around, and you actually need to look after me. And if you don't, I will go somewhere else and I will buy bikes off someone else. And we realized that in order for him to sell more, he has to service it. Well, when he sells a bike, he services it, and then eventually he will trade that in on a new bike. And it's a really nice little circle. And so we knew that we had to get new bikes through, because if we don't get new bikes through, we can't service them. We can't then trade them in on more new bikes. Anyway, long story short, he phoned up. He gently, in his words, twisted their arm. In other words, he basically put his foot down and said, right, send me some bikes. Otherwise, I'm going down the road. And they sent him some bikes.
Nice.
And they even gave him a discount, which was pretty cool, because he pays upfront in full for the bike. So he doesn't have to wait till normal terms of trade to kick in. Pays for it straight up and got an extra margin on it. So he had a huge win. In fact, he just made about $60,000 extra just on the increased margin that he made on those bikes, which was pretty cool.
Excellent. Awesome. So what's our topic today?
Well, so often we get, and you know this, we get asked, hey, what's the biggest problem in business? Often the biggest one is I don't sell enough stuff. So I thought today, to kick off, we'll just start off with selling stuff. I want to sell more stuff. How do I sell more stuff? And as our reference point for selling more stuff, we'll go to the book, because the book is the right place for us to start. So the best small business in the world, and this is what, if you want to grow your business, and specifically in this context, your sales. What do we actually get? What can we take from the book? Okay, so if selling more stuff is the outcome, more sales what comes before that? What comes before the outcome? So we work backwards from that point, right? So the first question I would do with somebody who says, I want to sell more stuff, is I'd ask them around their repeatable systems. So in reality check number 5 in the book, and the best small business in the world, it's a reality check about systems. So do you have a sales system or process? And if they do, and often they don't, and which is fine, it's just part of life here. We don't have a system necessarily for everything. And then I'd look at your competitors, because the reason that you're not selling some stuff could be as a result of your competitors. And then I'd take those things and I go, okay, let's look at your brand. And then I look at your target market. So under branding is your target market sort of stuff, right?
We'll take a pause for a second and explain what is a brand. What's our definition?
A brand. Ooh, yeah, good question. So, interesting question when you actually ask. Those are really, really big questions, right? Huge questions. A brand is the symbol of your business, but it's more than a logo. Brand is a logo is part of a brand, but a brand is not a logo. A brand is the things that your constituents, so your target market, associate with your business. So when you think of Nike, what do you think of? Athletic shoes, quality. You might think of made in sweatshops, stuff like that. I don't know. But there'll be some attributes that you associate with that brand. And same as a big business, Nike, Apple, all that sort of stuff, they have brands, very, very well managed brands. And then every single small business. When you walk by your local coffee shop, like, what do you think when you see that local coffee shop? Is it upmarket, just a normal high street place, or is it sort of real entry level basic food and low quality, that sort of stuff? So it's all the things that you associate with that business. We think of a brand as a logo or something like that, but it's way more than that. It's much more than that. It's the customer experience. It's the logos. It's the way that people are treated. It's the whole experience of being associated with a business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I tend to think of it as what they think of you. What does your customer think of you? Right.
That's what I was trying to say when I took 5 minutes longer. So under the brand thing, and this is in the book as well, and there's actually a process to go through. Before you want to sell more, you've got to make sure that you're actually saying the right things to the right people. So
well, that goes right to the target customer, right? The right people.
Yeah.
So who is your target customer? The only wrong answer, by the way, to who is your target customer is everybody. Right. Right. That's the only wrong answer.
The only really interesting thing. So there's an exercise in the book about your target market, right? So there's this really good exercise, and this is an exercise that I've been using. I've owned 2 advertising agencies, by the way, so I know a little bit about branding. But your target market can be defined by 3 things: demographics, psychographics, and behaviors. So the stuff that they do. And most people just sit there and go, my target market is, I'll give you an example. My target market is women between 18 and 65. And I'm like, no, I don't think that is your target market. This was from a client of mine years ago. And they were a clothing shop, and it was a big box clothing shop. And they said, our target market is 18 to 65-year-old woman. Think about it like this, right? So I'm not a woman, but an 18-year-old woman, how much change does their life go through between the ages of 18 to 21? And the people in the group, they all said, oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, I'm a different person. I was a different person at 21 than what I was at 18. I said, okay, then go from 21 to 25. How much of a difference is that? Oh, it's quite a difference, quite a massive difference. 21, probably at university, 25, probably out of university in first job, maybe in a romantic situation, possibly married, possibly not, maybe, doing all that sort of stuff, probably has traveled to some extent. What about 30? 30, oh yeah, 25 to 30, yeah, massive changes. Maybe a parent by that stage, might be married, long-term relationship. 35, anyway, went all the way up, 65, almost ready for retirement if they haven't retired already. So an 18-year-old person and a 65-year-old person are chalk and cheese, even though they're both women and they both, have needs to buy clothing and all that sort of stuff. So what we identified, and this is the tool is in the book, that you need to talk to a person. And the narrower that you can define that person, the more useful it is, because the purpose of having a target market is to define the language that you use when you're actually having a conversation. So if I'm having a conversation with an 18-year-old woman and a 65-year-old woman, possibly the language and the things that we focus on will be different. So that's why target market is really important, because it helps you define the language to use before you do that.
So can I just chime in here? Because, we said the target market, everybody's the wrong answer. Too big a spread is the wrong answer. And, the other, so two things, and we can kind of, something that goes into client stories as well. The narrower you can focus on your niche until you get to about $10 million or so, generally the more successful you're going to be. Okay, and the more you can potentially charge, and you can specialize and really provide something. Everybody's afraid of doing that, or a lot of people are afraid of doing that because they think it's going to be too small an audience, they won't sell enough. But what's our principle? You focus in on the niche, on the target customer, you really define who that person is, you have that avatar, and then you delight them. And when you delight the few, what happens, Matt?
Delight the few, you get the many, because
you attract the many.
You attract the many because people look over their shoulder and go, how come they're having such a good time over there? And
exactly.
So you target market, and it's also, when people do this, is they look at their customers, they go, it's our most common customer. Well, it might not be. It might be. I'm not saying it's not, but it might.
Even if it is, are they the ones that you want, and are they the ones you want to design your whole offering around? So,
and that's where the target market exercise in the book, we look at three parts to a really good understanding of your target market, and you've got to have all three.
And that's where that you mentioned the demographic. I think too often people rely on the demographic relationship, right? The definitions and do that. But think about, as you just mentioned, the commonalities among that demographic, and could you further define that person, psychographically, behaviorally, and those are, again, some of the things that we break down in the book, but you can think about that and start to identify better who those ideal customers are. Who do you love working with? That's kind of what it comes down to.
Totally. And your point about, the narrower you define your market, the more that you will delight those people, and the more people will look over their shoulder and go, hey, what's all that about? Got a really good example of exactly that, right? So there is a fashion brand that you can jump on. I'm not sure what their website is, but I have seen, because it was forwarded to me from a friend of mine, and it's called Freddie. And Freddie make pants predominantly, but clothing for women to show off their curves, shall we say. It is all about tight, hugging, fitting clothing with people who want to show off their curves and to be noticed. And they have this bum lift pair of jeans that they sell. And apparently that is the new cool thing to wear, is a pair of jeans that lifts their butt. And hey, I think that's fantastic. But they've got a whole business built on the style of the jeans and what it does to a woman's butt, which I think is just amazing. Talk about niche marketing. Their market, as far as I could tell, and as far as we had a discussion about it with some mates of mine last week, female friends, by the way, were females in their 20s who want to be admired for their bottoms, which I thought was a very specific target market. But I'm not sure it wouldn't be successful. I think this company is actually quite successful. I know it's an international company anyway. So yeah, target market. So start with target market. And then you go into the whole brand promise thing. You're not going to sell more stuff until you get those things right and you're actually talking to the right people. Because if you get all this stuff right, you get your brand promise and all that sort of stuff right. Eventually, you'll get some people going to the top of your funnel, right? Your sales funnel. And think about, I'm a really bad drawer, by the way, so don't ever expect much from me, but I'll put up a smile on their face. There we go, happy days. And they come into your sales funnel. Now, some people will bounce out of your funnel because they'll figure out that what you sell is not what they want. But eventually, if you want to sell more stuff, which is this part here, which is sell more stuff, sell more stuff, sell more stuff, then you're going to get some people in your funnel, and then you have a sales process in here that actually converts them into customers. I'll give you a really good example of this. These guys here, long-time clients of mine. They're one of the biggest building firms in the world, and I deal with their biggest branch. And these guys build, I think, up to about sort of 600 or 700 homes a year, just around where I live, which is pretty amazing when you actually think about it. Anyway, long story short, they came to me with the same problem a few years ago, and we couldn't do anything about the brand because it was a franchise. But we really quickly identified that their sales process wasn't up to the mark. They were talking to the right people, they were having the right conversations, but they weren't getting them across the line. So we broke the sales process down into a series of milestones with mini milestones along the way. And by defining the sales process, and it's literally, there's 27 parts to it, but there's only like 4 milestones. And each part works towards a milestone. And we put in subtleties. And one of the subtleties was a guy called Bob DeLue, who's the owner of the business. He would make an scheduled but random stop in to see people who are looking at buying a property. And they'd say, oh, there's the owner of the business, Bob. And Bob is about 6'10". Wears work boots, goes on site every day. He doesn't want to be in the office. He doesn't have any interest in that. He just wants to be out working around building houses. He walks around with a level to make sure that everything that's got his name on it is level and flush and straight and all that sort of thing. He's basically our own or their own internal quality control guy who owns the company. Anyway, long story short, we would schedule a spontaneous visit by him to the customers to say, hey, you're thinking, oh, I'm Bob, I own the business, we'll take good care of you and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so we built a sales process. We went from a conversion rate. Now, bear in mind, these are $1 million houses. These are high-end properties. We went from a conversion rate in the low teens, which is still pretty good for that industry, into the mid-30s. In other words, 30% of their customers were now buying our house. Now, bear in mind all the things that got in the way of people buying houses: finance, availability of land, time frames. Often people, when they build houses, don't realize how long it actually takes, all that sort of stuff. So there's all these different things that get in the way. But they more than doubled their conversion rate because they had a really good sales process. And maybe in a future podcast, Eddie, we could talk about what a sales process looks like and how you would actually build one. Hopefully make some sense. And yeah, maybe we could talk, maybe in one of our future podcasts, mate, we could talk about how to build a sales process.
Sure. I mean, we're going to be talking all things business. So
exactly. And that's not necessarily covered in here, but all the other stuff is, like, the systems and processes about the competitor analysis. I think that's reality check number 4. We do a competitive analysis and we ask you some really interesting questions about your competitors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about the book, you can just simply visit thebestbusinessintheworld.com, thebestbusinessintheworld.com, or reach out to one of us on LinkedIn. I mean, we're easy to find. Matt Fitzsimmons, business doctor, Sturdy McKee. I mean, there aren't that many Sturdy McKees, just 2 in my house, but you can certainly find us. He's Matt, I'm Sturdy, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
We'll see you next week.